There is a class called Peace Museum Seminar at Ritsumeikan University in Kyoto, Japan. There are students from various countries who study museums for peace. They often visit the Kyoto Museum for World Peace on campus, and they also study museums for peace in Japan and other countries. One day, I asked them to read the INNP newsletter 18, in which they can learn the history of the INNP. I also asked them to read Muse newsletter of the Japanese Citizens Network of Museums for Peace. Before introducing their ideas, let me make clear the roles of both international and Japanese networks first. The students' ideas on both networks will show some achievements of both networks and challenges. The International Network of Museums for Peace was formed in 1992 when the first International Conference of Peace Museums was held at the University of Bradford in England. The International Network organizes international conferences, publishes books such as Museums for Peace, Past, Present, and Future. INNP newsletters are published quarterly and monthly. The INNP compiles a guidebook of museums for peace worldwide and exchanges exhibits. In order to know about the INNP history, I suggested that students read the INNP newsletter number 18, which is available on the website. As for partnership with the United Nations, in 1997, INNP was recognized as a registered organization by the United Nations Department of Public Information in New York. Since May 2014, INNP has been granted special advisory member status to the United Nations Economic and Social Council upon the recommendation of the Committee of Non-Governmental Organization. In 2008, the INNP office was opened in The Hague and moved to Kyoto Museum for World Peace at Ritsumeikan University in Kyoto, Japan in 2018. Here are some examples of the roles of the INNP in terms of exchanging exhibits. Photo exhibits on atomic bomb survivors were donated from Grassroots House in Kochi, Japan, to the Source into Plowshares Peace Center and Gallery in Detroit in 1995, when such exhibits were rejected at the Smithsonian Institution. There was only a simple display of the B-29 Enola Gay bomber at the National Air and Space Museum, so it was important to show what really happened by the atomic bombing. As another example of having an exhibition from a different museum for peace, Dr. Eric Somers, a researcher at the NIOD Institute for War, Holocaust, and Genocide Studies, held an exhibition of memories of the Japanese occupation of Indonesia, Dutch, Japanese, and Indonesian perspectives at the Kochi Liberty and People's Rights Museum in Kochi City in 2000 and other places in Japan. The Nagasaki National Peace Memorial Hall for the atomic bomb victims held the atomic bomb exhibition at the National War and Resistance Museum at Overloon in the Netherlands in 2010, thanks to Dr. Eric Somers' cooperation. It should be noted that there have been exchanges of ideas among students and young people through the INNP. For example, Professor Roy Tamashiro of Webster University in the USA brought his students to my Peace Studies class at Ritsumeikan University. Students exchanged ideas about the Fukushima nuclear disaster in 2011. We had students from Tehran Peace Museum at the Kyoto Museum for World Peace in September 2014, and it was reported in the Mainichi Shimbun newspaper. After such an exchange of ideas, one of the Japanese students visited the Tehran Peace Museum and she was warmly welcomed. Such exchanges would lead to mutual understanding and creating a culture of peace thanks to the international network of museums for peace. There have been also Peace Academy held in Nogundi Peace Memorial in the Republic of Korea. There are two networks for museums for peace in Japan. One is the Japanese Citizens Network of Museums for Peace, and the other is the Association of Japanese Museums for Peace. The former was established in 1998 when the Third International Conference of Peace Museums was held in Osaka and Kyoto. The Citizens Network organizes national conferences, publishes Muse newsletter both in Japanese and English since 1999. The Japanese Museums for Peace exchanges information through its mailing list. They also exchange exhibits among museums for peace. English version of Muse has been translated by volunteers called Translators Without Borders, Kazuyo Yamane, and so forth. Muse newsletter is available on the websites of the Center of the Tokyo Race and War Damage and the Anzai Science and Peace Office. Another network that includes large peace museums is the Association of Japanese Museums for Peace, established in 1994. There are 10 members, such as Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum, Nagasaki Atomic Bomb Museum, Kyoto Museum for World Peace, and so forth. They are relatively big museums, and the number of the visitors of these museums would be over 4 million, according to Professor Ikuro Anzai, the INP coordinator. A national conference is held every year, and ideas are exchanged to promote their activities for peace. Students were asked to write their ideas about the INNP newsletter 18 on the INP history and write their ideas in class called Peace Museum Seminar. A student pointed out the importance of each person's role to play as follows, quote, "Despite the INNP starting out as a small grassroots organization with limited financial resources, thanks to the dedication of these individuals in promoting the building of peace museums and peace itself, it was able to gain special consultative status with the Economic and Social Council of the UN in May 2014. This shows the importance of individuals, peace museums, and organizations in affecting change and promoting peace in the world, no matter how trivial it might seem to be. Everyone has a part to play. Since the idea of peace does not come off as something which would be worth investing into, monetary-wise, it is understandable as to why there were limited financial resources, especially when this peace movement just started. From this, individuals and organizations can play their part by either contributing monetary value to peace movement or museums, or just take time and efforts to promote the existence of these peace movements or museums, which would then educate people and exchange ideas across the INNP to hopefully inculcate a culture of peace throughout the world." Unquote. After learning museums for peace in the world, a student expressed hope for the future as follows. Quote, I think INNP has made a great contribution to peace and hopefully it will continue its movement more in the future throughout the world. Unquote. What should be done in the future? A student wrote, quote, I think it is necessary to publicize the existence of these peace museums or the events involved in them in order to get more people interested. I have learned that a small interest in peace can make a world-class organization and change the world. Unquote. As for some challenges, a student pointed out the importance of funding for the INNP since the network has been a platform to world peace building. Muse newsletter number 39 of the Japanese Citizens Network of Museums for Peace was also introduced to students. A student from Venezuela proposed to make a museums for peace in her country, which was encouraging to know. Reading articles on private peace museums, such as Women's Active Museum, criticizing Japanese military sexual slavery system in Tokyo, a student wrote the following ideas. Quote, the existence of these peace museums serves an important role in educating the people about Japan's past as aggressor and victim, and hopefully help foster a better understanding and relationship with people from other countries, especially Korea and China. As for one of the challenges, a student wrote ideas as follows. I believe that such peace museums are essential as a base in promoting peace education, but more could be and must be done to transmit the messages that these museums are advocating for. It is indeed a very challenging issue considering the embedded current structure in terms of history education in Japan and the political tension in regards to these historical issues. Unquote. Thus, students pointed out the important roles of the international and Japanese networks, as well as some challenges in the future. A student expressed a kind of confusion of the concept of war museum and peace museum, saying, I'm having difficulty in understanding if they're peace museum or not. This shows that the definition of peace museum, war museum, and museum for peace should be made clearer. An American student insisted on the importance of virtual tours of peace museums as follows, quote, one thing that I had actually hoped would happen is the virtual tours of peace museums around the world. I really would love to go to museums in The Hague or in England, but I will most likely never have a chance to go to these places, even for a vacation. However, there are some places that offer a Google Map Street View style of museum tour. I think that this would be beneficial to people who are from different countries to see what each museum has inside. However, I know that many museums don't want people to take pictures inside, but I feel that it's a good way to help spread the idea of peace. This idea of virtual tours at museums for peace is very important, especially when most of the museums for peace have been closed because of COVID-19. However, the question would be how to raise funds for such museums. Regardless of the size of museums for peace, it is time to think of making virtual exhibits so that more people can learn what they can do for peace online. More exchanges of exhibits, especially virtual exhibits, should be promoted. For example, Professor Ikuro Anzai, the INNP coordinator and a scientist, made panels on Fukushima nuclear accident and efforts for protecting citizens from the danger of radiation. Please contact the INNP office if you're interested in this exhibition. Thank you for listening.